So sort of got to talking about the job of the shepherd. And first of all, you learn this and looking into it, there was not a lot of pay. There was not a lot of what we would call material reward for the shepherd. And he I don't think he got into it for the money. I'll just say that. But the job demanded a lot out of the shepherd. I mean, constant attention and vigilance. I mean, this guy had to be aware. He had to be on top of things. And had to have courage. I mean, have you ever read about David? He was a famous shepherd. Had to have courage and endurance. The job was a hard job. And it was very arduous. It was very strenuous on the shepherd, and it was a very tiresome job because he was constantly scanning, constantly, helping the sheep get back into the flock, watching out and keeping his attention focused. And he had elements that he had to worry about, like rain and cold and heat. The shepherd, the land where they would shepherd the sheep, there was a lot of hills and mountain. It was mountainous, and lots of crevices and cliffs and things, where the sheep could fall and die, and you didn't want your sheep to fall and die, so he's constantly watching. And something I learned too is that it's easy for sheep to get lost. You know why? They wander. They leave the flock and go searching, I guess, for more grass, or maybe get sidetracked by things that they shouldn't be paying attention to or whatever. But they end up wandering off and getting lost. And so the shepherd had to go find them. And so the shepherd had to think about and constantly count possibly his sheep and call to them and say, come back over here, Blackie, or whatever. And he had to think about wild animals. I mean, he had to think about predators out there, things that wanted his sheep to eat. The predator wanted to eat the sheep. And wolves, and in the scriptures we read about jackals and lions and bears. Thinking about David, he killed the lion and the bear as a shepherd boy, a young boy. You talk about courage. This man cared about his sheep. And I mean, first of all, how far have we gotten into this, and you're already thinking, I just don't want to do that. Well, I'm telling you, I understand. Because being a shepherd looks like it's a tough job. Then, on top of all the wild animals and the predators and such, and on top of worrying about whether they wander off or whether they fall and get hurt, off of cliffs and things like that, then you've got the human element. You've got thieves and robbers that want what you've got. They want those sheep that belong to you as the shepherd, or at least that are under your care. Thieves and robbers. My daddy always taught me, he said, two things I will not tolerate, is a thief and a liar. And boy, he hates them. So I learned not to lie and not to steal. But back to, I digress. Thieves and robbers. And that's out in the field, But we read about in John chapter 10, verse 1, that, the one who climbs up in the sheepfold, after the shepherd got the sheep back to the sheepfold, and at the end of the day, a long, hard day, he would leave him in charge of the doorkeeper, and the doorkeeper had to think about the thieves and robbers that would climb up another way. And these guys, they understood that the sheep knew the voice of their shepherd. They knew that the shepherd cared about those sheep and were very intimately connected with those sheep, and the sheep knew the voice of that shepherd. And so when they would break in, they would come up over the wall. They couldn't just call the sheep, here, sheepy, sheepy, sheepy. No, that didn't work. They had to just grab the sheep and slit its throat, because they knew that that sheep wouldn't come to them. And they'd throw the sheep over the wall, then they'd take its wool and then eat the sheep. False shepherds do that. That's what they do. You say, well, that's pretty graphic. Well, it happens in real life. False shepherd, he don't care nothing about the sheep, except for the provision that the sheep affords him, the false shepherd. This ought to upset anybody. You see a picture here now, and Yeshua called this a figure of speech or a metaphor, or in verse 6, he said this is a word picture. I am painting you a picture to let you people know that are listening to me that these guys, these Pharisees, are people that climb up another way. They don't go through the door. What is the door in verse 1? Well, these are my thoughts. The door is the right, the authority, the privilege, the ownership. And Jesus has the right, the privilege, and the ownership of the sheep in the sheepfold. The thief and the robber does not have the right, the privilege, and the ownership. We'll talk more about that, but remember to take care of the widows, orphans, and poor. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Love you.